Welcome to Dirt Road Discussions, the podcast where we're all about agriculture all the time, broadcasting from the Idaho Farm Bureau Federation headquarters. We introduce you to people from all over the country who are keeping agriculture growing strong. Whether you're a seasoned farmer or just someone curious about where your food comes from, you're in the right place. So let's take a journey down the dirt road.
Hey everyone, welcome to the podcast that's smoother than a well-timed amendment and just a little less confusing than reading a 200-page bill. Dirt Road Discussions. I am your host, Cam Hammond. I'm glad to be joined, as always, by my co-host, Mr. Ott Clark. Ott, how are you?
I'm good. Very good.
Excited today?
Always. Yeah, I think we've got a couple characters today that I'm excited to get to grill a little bit.
Characters is an apt description.
Yeah. Yep.
Very nice. Okay. Ott, I've got a question for you. When you hear the words legislative session, what comes to mind?
Just chills down my back. I'm not these politics, it's not for me. I'm glad that there's some people that like it, but it's not my cup of tea.
Okay, different kind of chills. I thought like wow, I have the chills.
No,
these people are amazing.
I'm glad that people enjoy it and love it and, are willing to take the time, but
yeah.
It's just not my passion, but I'm so glad that there's individuals out there that it is their passion.
Absolutely.
You?
So when I think of legislative session, I think of a branding pen. Okay? It's kind of crazy. There's a whole lot going on, but there is a method to the madness.
Okay.
And in the end, hopefully you get all the cows branded, calves taken care of, and you move on with your day.
I did not ever imagine that branding and legislative session would work hand in hand.
Okay, Ott, so here's the thing. While most of us are out worrying about the weather, markets, whether equipment's going to work, there are folks at the Capitol working on policies that affect all of us, from water to land use, taxes, regulations, to the everyday decisions that shape how agriculture operates in this state. So it all gets talked about and decided during that legislative session. So it is crazy. There's a lot going on, but usually things work out pretty well in the end. So unless you've got time to sit through every committee meeting, it can be hard to keep track of what actually matters. Would you agree?
Oh, 100%.
So we are going to talk about this today, and we have a few guests here that are going to help make sense of it all. But before we do, we've got to introduce our guests. We are pleased to be joined by Braden Jensen and Dexton Lake. Braden and Dexton are both on the Governmental Affairs Team for the Idaho Farm Bureau Federation, and their job is to help us make sense of what happened this past legislative session. So, Braden, Dexton, thanks so much for joining us on Dirt Road Discussions, and how are you?
Yeah, good. Thank you for the invitation. It's good to be here.
Yeah. We are excited to visit with you, but first, we usually play a game with Ott called Ott Shots, and Ott loves it most of the time, except when we're talking about electricity. He does not like that one.
It's a great thing to see other people play.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
So that's why I think we should have them
100%
help
behind
out
this
with Ott
idea.
Shots.
Ott Shots today. So.
Put us in the hot seat.
Listeners, if you remember, Dexton Lake actually is no stranger to the podcast. So he was a co-host once upon a time when Ott fell ill, and Dexton stepped in last minute and did a great job. So we offered him the position. He turned it down, and so that's why you're still here.
Thank you for not stealing my job.
So when we played last time, we called it Dex's Guesses. So let's play Dex's Guesses again, and then Jensen's jeerings, I don't know.
Ooh, yeah.
Jensen's musings. Anyway, we're going to play a game here, and we're going to put them to the test. So, as I mentioned, you guys work for Governmental Affairs. A term that is used to describe your job is a lobbyist, but that's kind of a swear word, right? Are you guys lobbyists per se?
Well, I think when when most people think about lobbyists, they typically think of those backroom deals, those backroom meetings, smoke-filled rooms, things like that. And I would certainly say that is not the type of lobbyist that we are here at the Farm Bureau. Luckily, we like to refer to ourselves as legislative advisors, And, you know, I think it's important to understand that our elected officials over here, as they come to Boise, they don't have paid staff, but they are yet asked to vote on a whole variety of things, everything from taxes to Medicare to land use decisions, water, wildlife, and everything in between. And they're expected to make a vote. And so we try to help provide them some additional information as they start making those decisions. So
Perfect.
yeah.
Thanks for that explanation. I thought we needed to provide that context before we jump into it because, yeah, you guys are advisors. You help provide our legislators with some valuable information so that they can make informed decisions.
Yeah.
So we appreciate the work that you do, but let's jump into Dex's guesses and Jensen's whatever here. So, all right, first question. This is our legislative session edition of this game. So First question, what is a committee hearing and why is it important for agriculture?
So a committee hearing, when a bill gets, when an idea becomes a bill, before it gets heard by the entire body, whether it be the House or the Senate, a committee of people from the House or the Senate ultimately hear that idea first before the whole body has to be burdened by hearing that bill. And it is also an opportunity for people from the public to contribute to that bill, meaning they can either come speak in favor of it or speak in opposition to it. It is one of the few chances that the public can engage in the actual policymaking process. And so committees are made up based on topic. So, you know, here in the state legislature, it varies by each legislative body, but primarily you have a tax committee, and this is generally, but you have a tax committee, you have an ag committee, you have a resources committee, you have a local government committee, you have a business committee. And so depending on the substance of the bill, it gets assigned to any one committee, and members of the legislature make up that committee, and the bill sponsor introduces it and explains it, and then questions are asked, people testify, and then ultimately they either vote to send it out of committee to be heard by the full floor or keep it in committee if it's an unfavorable or bad bill.
Okay. Odd, how'd he do?
I would just like to emphasize that all of Shot's quizzes are off the wall topics. Like, you asked me about fashion one time, and Dexton gets a question based solely on his area of expertise. I am furious right now.
I wanted to make our guests feel welcome.
Okay.
And comfortable.
I'll allow it.
And
comfortable.
The next question better be harder.
Sorry, Braden, you wanted to jump in there at the end.
No. Just going to add that's part of the process, and that's really where the vast majority of the details and getting into the details really takes place. But I think Dexton did a great job.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, that was definitely an easy question.
He nailed it. Yes. We understand. He's smart.
Smart guy.
Yeah.
He is a smart guy.
I wish I had some harder questions.
Oh, no. These are all softballs?
These are all pretty easy. Okay, next question here. So there are 3 very important numbers when it comes to the legislature. What are those numbers and why are they important?
So I'll take this one. When I first started my career, I remember one of my colleagues sent me down that you got to remember these numbers and why they're so important. So he said, it's 18, it's 36, and it's 1. So Jensen, why is that important? And I remember being a young lobbyist and thinking about, well, how many people we got in the legislature and all that. But it all comes down to a majority. So there's 35 senators in the Senate chamber. You need a majority of them, so 18. On the House side, you've got 70 representatives. So you need a majority of them, 36. And you need 1 governor. So for a bill, for any concept, any legislative proposal to become law, you need at least 18 senators, you need at least 36 representatives, and you need 1 governor to sign on for that to become law. Of course, there's the exceptions when it comes to veto and things like that and being able to override that, but essentially those are 3 important numbers that any good lobbyist should keep in mind.
Wow.
I did not know that.
know
That was
that
a good
either.
question.
Great job. Yeah, thanks for explaining that. I We had no idea on that. So, okay, next question. You mentioned the veto power.
Yeah.
Who has that power, and what does it take to overturn a legislative body decision?
Yeah.
Or what does it take to overturn a veto from that individual?
Okay.
Go for it.
All right. So the governor's the one that has the veto power, right? And so he's the one that after a bill is passed by both chambers, he has the opportunity to review that, and he can either sign it into law. He can let the time frame expire and let the law go into effect without his signature, or he can bring out his veto pen and veto the bill. In that case, that's not the final word. That veto will go back to the legislature, where it can be overridden with a 2/3 vote from each chamber. And so that is kind of how that veto process works generally.
Okay.
Yeah.
And when a bill is vetoed at the end of session, so say all the business is finished by the two bodies, they will not adjourn permanently until they know whether or not the governor is going to veto anything. Because once they say we're done, we're leaving, and have what's called sine die or without day, then their ability to override a veto is no more.
No more. Okay.
Threw in some Latin as well.
Yeah,
Very
that was
impressive.
actually. I mean, we're just gonna have to take their word for it. 'Cause we have
Yeah,
no idea.
I'm not going to call him out.
Fact check.
But that leads me to my next question. You mentioned that Latin phrase. What is that phrase again, and what does it signify? And it's something that you all look forward to
Yeah.
in your position. So,
So sine die is a Latin term. It's spelled S-I-N-E die, D-I-E. And it's a Latin, and it's actually pronounced a couple different ways. You can either say sine die or sine die. And it means without day. And what it essentially means is this is the last day of the legislative session. We have concluded our business.
Yeah.
And the minute that the first gavel drops on the first day of session, everybody's talking about sine die. It's what we aspire to. Now, the way that we accomplish that in Idaho, to be able to get that, is having a balanced budget.
Yeah.
There's no other work that the state legislature has to do besides having a balanced budget before they can adjourn for the year. And until they do that, we are in session, and they count it by calendar days. And once that gavel drops on sine die, the budget is balanced, and there's no more work to do.
and you guys are just jubilant, right?
Yes, we are.
It feels like out of school. Like, never in my life did I think I was going to have a career that felt like the last day of school. And every time I'm like, it's summer break. And it feels fantastic because the ties come off, the jackets come off.
Your parents drop your bike off at school and you get a ride home.
Yeah.
right?
Exactly.
Yeah. Nice. Okay. That's exciting. So how do you prefer to pronounce it? 'Cause you
I
mentioned
say
there's two
sine
ways.
die.
Sine die.
Nobody
says
really
sine
ever,
die.
nobody says sine die, really.
Well, we're just going to start saying sine die today
Yeah.
just to bug these guys.
Yeah.
So,
The outsiders.
yeah.
I like
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. Okay. I think so far they've got every question
Yeah.
right. I've got one more for you. How many committees are there across the Senate and the House?
Ooh, good question.
You kept the Senate, I'll take the House.
They're doing math right now.
Something right.
I think I've got 7 Senate committees, standing committees, and then you have the Joint Finance and Appropriation Committee.
Yeah.
And then you have on the House side, I'm guessing, if I had to guess, and I'm not,
You have a couple more than that.
I would say 9 on top of that.
Yeah, because
So-
commerce and business are combined on the Senate side. You have business and commerce on the House side, so that inherently gives you one more. And then you have ways and means.
Yeah.
So there's 9.
Environment, energy, and technology.
Environment, energy. So there's 10.
Mm-hmm.
They all have student rules. They all have local government. Oh, but local government and taxation is combined on the Senate side.
Yeah,
so you
exactly.
have rev and tax. There's 11.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's it.
So 11 plus the 7 plus the 1.
So 11, 7, 18, 19 committees. Plus
Okay.
a 20th, which is the, what do they call it? It's the one, like the ethics committee. There's an ethics committee.
That's correct.
Man.
They nailed it. See how well they work together as a
Yeah.
team?
Jeez, you guys should work for the Farm
Fantastic.
Bureau. You guys are great people.
Well, Braden and Dexton, congratulations. You survived Dex's guesses, and you nailed it. That's something Ott has never done. He's never gotten all the questions correct.
My entire life is one big guess. I walk around that Capitol and I'm just guessing.
Yeah.
Well, you are a good guesser, so we appreciate you playing with us today. So let's jump right into it here. So, Braden and Dex, real fast, would you mind just giving us a quick background about who you are and how you came into your position? We'll get in more into that later on, too, but just a brief description of who you guys are.
Start.
Yeah. So first of all, Braden Jensen. I'm originally from northern Utah. I was born and raised on a family farm and sheep ranch down there, and I studied at Bear River High School. Went on to college there at Utah State University. I always had aspirations to go back to the farm, and that's where I always thought I would be. But when that didn't become a reality, the next best thing was a career with the Farm Bureau. My family was longtime Farm Bureau members. My dad was a county president for 10 or 12 years, and my mom actually still serves on the Utah Farm Bureau State Board. And anyways, I've always loved this organization. So as I finished up a master's degree there at Utah State, this job came available, and so came here to Idaho, moved me and my wife here, and since we've set down roots there in Caldwell. I've got 4 kids, twin girls, and a couple boys, and we've got an old fixer-upper for a house, and that keeps us plenty busy when I'm not here working with the Farm Bureau.
Awesome. Dexton.
So I would like to make the pointed statement that of our 4-person team, I'm the only native-born Idahoan. So I'm from Blackfoot. I grew up on a farm and ranch there, but I too studied at Utah State University. I have a bachelor's degree in plant science, a bachelor's degree in ag business, and a master's degree in ag business. So no real political education per se, but my grandpa was in the House of Representatives for 16 years, and he would come back and discuss what was going on at the Capitol. And I knew that I wanted to do something related to agricultural advocacy. I just didn't know what that would be. And so when I was working on my master's degree, I needed to have some sort of research project in lieu of a thesis. And one of our mutual colleagues who was my ag teacher in high school, Justin Patton, I had called him because I knew he worked for Farm Bureau, but I didn't grow up in Farm Bureau. And I just knew that they spoke for ag and they had a presence in Idaho. I asked, hey, is there some sort of quantitative research study I could do for Farm Bureau? And lo and behold, there was. I was able to do a research project where we surveyed ranchers in the state who had state leases on their non-fee cost of grazing in the state of Idaho, because the University of Wyoming, who the state had contracted with, couldn't complete the study. Mm-hmm. And I came on, I was able to do the research project. I wrote my thesis about it. I got my research project paper about it, and then it was kismet. There became a lobbyist position came available shortly after I graduated, and here I am. I have a wife and a sweet little 2-year-old, and we're just plumb happy to be here.
Yeah, great.
I'm going to get us started.
Let's do it. Let's jump into it.
I would like to know what you guys, as we're filming, it is post-session. They have called it for the year. What did you guys do over the last 4 months? Like, kind of take me through how busy you were, some of the big issues that you guys worked on.
So I guess I want to even back up just a little bit more. It kind of goes back to your original question about a lobbyist, right? And we can say lobbyist, legislative advisor. But I think sometimes those individuals, our colleagues, sometimes we get a bad rap. But specifically what we do There's lots out there that think that we just are a special interest group. Okay, well, you can classify us like that, but it's important to understand, Farm Bureau, the way that we arrive at any position that we take, as Dexton and myself and our other colleague are over there representing the views of Farm Bureau, we're representing the views of people. Sometimes a lot of people want to classify us as big ag. All right, yeah, we are big, and the Farm Bureau is the state's largest general ag organization, but we represent people. We represent individuals, their families, their family operations. And that's what we do over there. To your question, is that we represent the positions of our member families over there at the Idaho Capitol. And I think it's extremely important to understand because Idaho is a big state. It takes a long time for some of our members to get to Boise. And then the process that Dexton really talked about, particularly when he was talking about, the committee hearing process, and then it goes to the floor and overriding vetoes and minimum numbers of votes and all these different things, that can be intimidating for a lot of folks. But yet the policy decisions that are made over in that building, they impact us. They impact our daily lives. And so what we try to do is just make sure that we're aware of the policy discussions that are happening. And then we try to analyze how is this going to impact our members. We compare that to our policy positions that our members go through on a yearly basis and make sure that, those policy decisions that those elected officials are taking and making over there, that they're going to work. They're going to work for everyday Idahoans and for Idaho agriculture and rural communities.
As far as, I think one thing that people don't understand there is you think it's exclusively your locally elected political official who writes legislation or writes bills. That's a lot of where we come in.
Yeah.
It is our primary responsibility to not only inform, but to bring ideas that can then translate into law to benefit the state of Idaho. And so while we are observing what's going on at the legislative session, we're also bringing things that could potentially be picked up by a legislator to go through the process and hopefully become a law. And we pride ourselves at Farm Bureau by trying to be movers and shakers. There are, not to, deride our legislative advisor colleagues, but there are just some who sit and listen and that's all they do, and just send an update to their clients. We feel it is our responsibility to ensure that the policy that Idaho Farm Bureau members put into our policy book turns into something that is actually measurable for one, but also benefits agriculture. And you can't do that by just sitting on the sidelines.
Yeah.
So can I jump in?
Yeah.
You mentioned policy book. Can you explain just in 5th grade level, 10 sentences, where those policies come from and where that policy book is, like how you guys use it?
So probably in the simplest form, it comes from our members, right? An idea or an issue arises on a family farm or a ranch or whatever. The issue, it's a challenge. It's a problem, right? It's a situation that the individual needs to, find a resolution for. So they bring the issue to their local county farm bureau, right? They propose a resolution. That resolution is ultimately voted on by that local county farm bureau board. Then that idea keeps on advancing, right? It goes on to a district meeting where multiple county farm bureaus, 7 to 8 county farm bureaus, will take all of those different resolutions, those policy resolution ideas from those individual counties, and they will discuss them. They'll talk about them, and then they'll hash over them, and they'll ultimately vote on those. And then those resolutions that pass from a district level will go on to the state level. At our annual meeting, we hold what we call our House of Delegates, where we'll have 2 representatives from each of our county farm bureaus that they will review all of these policy resolution ideas, and they'll discuss them again and ultimately vote on those. And those are the things that become Idaho Farm Bureau policy. And I think it's important to understand that there is that formalized process because again, we do have a big membership. We have members and a very diverse membership. We have members of all shapes and sizes in all different sectors of the industry. And so how do we arrive at a consensus? It's by going through that formalized process. And then that way we have confidence when we go up there and stand that the majority of our Farm Bureau members share this position value, right? And so that we can push that forward through the legislature.
So what you described then is basically a grassroots organization. So your marching orders, your directives come from the members that you represent.
Yeah.
So it's not you guys going to the legislature and saying, Jensen wants this.
And
right?
thank goodness that's not the case, right? I mean, if we're going to put all of our hope into, our 3 legislative advisors for the Farm Bureau, there's a lot that rides on us, but the positions, again, those positions are positions made by our members.
Yeah.
So that's what we represent.
And I would imagine, too, when you go and visit with those legislators, again, you're not just sitting on the sidelines like you mentioned. You are an active participant in helping them either draft legislation or getting them the information that they need. I would imagine that takes quite a bit of trust, right? Talk me through about your approach to building those relationships, because I'm sure that's a big part of what you all do in your job.
The problem with how that works when you're actually in session is inevitably legislators know you just want something out of them. You want to vote. You want them to support what it is you're hoping they'll support or oppose what it is you're hoping they'll support. And so it can be really difficult to overcome that. I mean, just this hat in hand, hey, I need this from you. And so that's why, especially us at Farm Bureau really try to swing our net wide outside of the session. We will throughout the year, and we're doing it now, are meeting with legislators and just letting them know that we appreciate them. That is one thing that often goes unnoticed one thing that often happens is just an appreciation towards our elected officials. And naturally there's just a bad connotation about politics and politicians, but they do a lot of good. And that can't go unnoticed. Arguably, you can say they also do a lot of bad, but things zero out, right? Now, when we're actually meeting with them, it depends on the personality, right? Some people just want you direct. They want to know what it is you want. They want a very clear explanation of the bill, and that can happen in an office. Some people won't even meet with us in an office. So we really have to practice our good, thorough explanations of bills and our quick Twitter post explanation of the bills.
Those elevator pitches, right?
There's that old Mark Twain saying, if I had more time, I would have written less. And that happens a lot at a legislative level. So, relationship building and that kind of thing, it's a key element of the job. Now, again, it just depends on the individual. You have to treat them like they're people.
Right.
And
I would just reiterate that relationship building is our business, right? I mean, the thing is there has to be trust, and the moment you lose that trust over there, your ability, your effectiveness to get things done is tarnished. Yeah. And so it really is all about relationships. And so, it's important that you understand the material that you're talking about, but then that you're always truthful and honest in all that you're doing.
And thankfully, Farm Bureau has that reputation,
right,
of being people with integrity.
Yeah.
And, that lives on beyond Russ, beyond Braden, beyond myself.
It's our members.
It's our members. And it comes with agriculture.
Yeah.
You mentioned work outside of the session. Can you talk a little bit about what you guys are going to do for the next 6 months to prepare to get some great bills through next year?
Yeah, I would go back to that policy development process that we kind of talked about. Really, we kick right off. We do a little bit of a kind of a report back throughout the legislative session. We're always trying to give them on a weekly basis updates, and Dexton does a great job leading our capital reflections, our media publications, and things like that, to make sure that our members can know the status of things as it's working through the legislative process. But what we're going to do during the interim is report back to our members what we were able to accomplish, what work still we have left to do, and then we want to continue to hear what are the issues? What are the current issues that our farmers and our ranchers are facing, right? What is it like out there in farm country? And what issues might we be able to, resolve on a local level, or what things do we need to take to the state level, bring back to Boise and address, be it through legislation, be it through policy or whatever, or maybe it's something on the national level as well. We're going to have lots of meetings with our members in the coming weeks and months. We're also going to start meeting with some of our colleagues broader. We have meetings with our regional state farm bureaus as well to kind of compare notes as well, because it's always nice to know what may be coming or what might be being discussed in neighboring states, because, the world is a lot smaller with the connectivity that we have with media and everything like that. Ideas spread all the faster. And so an issue that may be being faced in Wyoming or Utah or, heaven forbid, California, Washington, or Oregon, might find its way here to Boise, and we might need to think about a strategy on how to address it.
Yeah.
You guys have seen Elf. There's that part at
Elf.
Part at the very beginning where it's Santa's already delivered the gifts, and they're having the party that they've had a very successful year, and now it's time to start making preparations for next Christmas.
And they're all like, "Yay!"
Yeah, and they start cheering. It sounds kind of hyperbolic, but there's a lot of truth to that. The gavel falls on Sine Die, and it's like, all right, what are we going to do next legislative session? And we start making preparations for beginning of January of 2027.
Yes. Yeah.
The work never stops.
It
and
doesn't.
like you mentioned, farmers and ranchers, they're out there doing what they do best, farming and ranching.
Yeah.
Providing us our food and fiber. And so I know they rely on you all to go out to those meetings, build those relationships, and help provide that information to those people making those decisions. And so what you guys do is very important. And so I know our members definitely appreciate that. I wanted to jump into this past session, though, because it was a busy session for you all. Of course, Idaho is an ag state.
Yeah.
Ag's our economic driver. It's our backbone. And so a lot of the bills that come up, impact agriculture and our farmers and ranchers. So when you stepped into that branding pen first part of January, I know that property rights was one of the key issues. Could you guys talk more about that topic and what came from your efforts on that?
So that's one thing that Farm Bureau prioritizes is private property rights. Mm-hmm. There have been great strides taken to ensure that rights are protected here in Idaho, and that and there's a valid reason. The state is primarily public land, and so people very generally have open access to that public land. There are exceptions. But it came to our attention, and other states have been realizing this, that the Fourth Amendment, which protects us from unwarranted searches and seizures, doesn't apply to all private land. It applies to your home and your curtilage, so basically the area around your home. And like I mentioned, other states have addressed this, and the reason that this protection doesn't extend to all private property is because of a flawed Supreme Court ruling that established this thing called open fields doctrine, which means that your open fields are not protected under the Fourth Amendment. As you can imagine, in Idaho, we have a lot of open fields, and we don't want people just traipsing through our fields, be it anybody, but especially the government. And
several years ago, we really worked on reforming Idaho trespass laws to address the issue of a private citizen or a casual individual just going upon somebody's private property. But this really addressed the other aspect.
Yeah, the government coming and doing it. Yeah. Literally, the government coming and trespassing.
Yeah.
And they had free reign to do it. And so, over the course of the last few years, our colleague Russ and our members have really worked hard to try to figure out how do we restrict government access onto private property. And the solution turned into a bill this year is 1326 as amended, which exactly that. It prohibits law enforcement from entering onto private land without a warrant, without an permission from the landowner, or an exigent circumstance, which is like hot pursuit of somebody who had
Committed a crime,
which already exists and we understand. And the penalty for that is the landowner can go after the government agent and recoup. Well, excuse me, can go after the government agent, and that government agent, if the landowner prevails, would be fined $1,000 that would go into the rangeland improvement account that the state of Idaho has. There are some exceptions for that, like county police and city police. They wouldn't have that penalty. Instead, they could be fired, which is a much more severe penalty than $1,000. And so, some of the biggest offenders of this that have been brought up to us have been primarily fish and game, but also county assessors are a big culprit of this. And it was fascinating to hear some of the stories that surrounded this conversation, because it has been clear and evident, whoever the government agent is, that government has really utilized this open fields doctrine to just go and walk around wherever they want to. And in a state where it's 70% public land,
Yeah.
so that leaves 30% private land, then you trim that down even more because of what the Fourth Amendment already applies to. This law doesn't apply to a whole lot of Idaho. But the fact that the Supreme Court has allowed rights to not exist based on the type of land is ridiculous. And Idaho took a stand, and the governor acknowledged that this is a reflection of the true Idaho way. And we would agree with that.
And a recognition that there is going to have to be a little bit of a change with the way that state government agents work with this and deal with this. But we really hope that it leads to more communication, and for real respect for the private property, that we have more communication with the landowner if they need access, and completely. And I think what we heard that repeatedly through the committee process is that if a fish and game officer needs to have access, that they go and have that conversation with the landowner, and they'd be able to grant that to them. And again, the process really is laid out there. So
Yeah.
And I would say one more thing. In Idaho, this will circle back, but in Idaho, we are a super majority state. The Republicans have control of the executive branch and the legislative branch, hands down. This was a bipartisan issue. Democrats and Republicans strongly supported this issue because we strongly support our rights here in the state.
yeah.
I think I would add, I think almost every citizen in America or in Idaho thought that this was already the rule.
Correct?
Yeah, absolutely.
And, if you asked anybody, any random citizen, they would all say, why isn't that the rule? And so I think we finally achieved what everybody thought should have been the rule,
Yeah.
50 years ago.
If you were to bet $10 on it with anybody on the street, you'd have a lot of $10 bills right now.
Next question, next big bill, labor. Can you guys tell us anything that happened on the labor side?
Yeah, I think something that happened during the legislative session, I think is still getting a lot of conversation, is a couple bills dealing with mandated E-Verify. And I just want to be super clear as we jump into this topic that our members are not satisfied with the status quo. We, like so many in the state and in this country, we recognize and we see the problem with our broken immigration system. We need that addressed. We support the government enforcing our immigration laws. We support a border that is actually recognizable, that it's enforced. I always share this with elected officials, that there is nobody that understands the value of a good fence better than a farmer and a rancher. Right. This is an industry that we understand what it means to actually have a workable, fence. With that as well, you've got to have gates, right? And coming back to your question and the topic of these mandated E-Verify bills, the couple things that people need to recognize, that this immigration issue is a congressional issue. This is a national issue. It's the federal government that oversees and has the jurisdiction of who comes into this country and what status they have. In the ag industry, we have a guest worker visa, and people say, well, why don't you just use the guest worker visa? If you can't get your domestic needs met, then why don't you use that guest worker visa? And that's the H-2A program. Great, awesome, Certainly, we recognize that, we value that. It's a system that it does work, not perfectly by any means. It's extremely expensive, it's extremely burdensome. It's probably really, and it's meant to be, you know, the option of last resort, but it does not work for our entire industry. And that's just the reality of it. It does not work and is not authorized to be used by year-round agriculture. So operations like dairies, certain livestock operations, nurseries can't utilize that because the Department of Labor considers that year-round agriculture. So all of a sudden we're going to start enforcing. What these bills would do is enforce that you have to use E-Verify, but yet, you know, you have a visa program that doesn't get all of your labor needs met. You have what here in Idaho, near full employment. Our unemployment levels are extremely low. There's not a lot of people that want to do this type of labor, and if they do, by all means, you know, they're doing it. And so, you know, we had to push back against those bills. And there's a lot of, you know, details and nuances and everything like that. Happy to go get into as well. But I think also it's important to recognize that the solution to this issue is not passing the enforcement onto our private businesses without being, you know, reimbursed for that or anything like that. And I think the biggest things that, you know, we as a Farm Bureau advocate for is that if we're going to have mandated E-Verify, we have to have a few things in place first. We have to make sure that there are certain liability protections for our employers. The process has to be smooth and easy. We also have to make sure that we have a workable guest worker program that will work for the entirety of agriculture. And that we also have to do something for our existing workforce right now, right? A lot of people would try to classify our existing workforce as low-level jobs, unexperienced, not non-skilled jobs, but really there is skill. There is you know, certain technical, you know, requirements to fulfill these jobs. And we want to see something that's going to adjust their status in a way that it's going to, you know, that we can actually continue to work and continue to operate and get our labor needs met.
Yeah. So a lot to work on, a lot of moving parts. But, you know, I think you're exactly right here. If we do get that figured out and it applies to everyone in ag, I mean, it's going to be a great boon to, you know, our farmers and our ranchers.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? So.
Absolutely. And it's an issue that we continue to work on, right, back there in Congress. It's, you know, and that's the arena where we need to be working on it. And that's why we keep on going back every single visit, whether it's myself, whether it's our leadership, whether it's our ag ambassadors, any one of our members, and so many other organizations that are going back there constantly pounding down the door. We need to fix this issue.
Yeah.
We need to fix this issue because then it's easier to accept these other mandates and things. Although I think we really need to make sure that we scrutinize whether the solution to any issue is growing more government or putting one more mandate on a private business.
Yeah.
And you know, take agriculture out of it. I mean, and in a pro-business state like Idaho has been, we have a fantastic economy. We have, I mean, the reason that people are drawn here is not only because of our public land, it's not only because of our, you know, just the beauty of our state, it's not because the people are friendly, it's because we help people thrive here.
Yeah.
And the way that's done is by less regulation and let the free market work. And when we are told that, and we being businesses across the state, not even just agriculture, that because the federal government can't do their job, you as the private individual need to do the job for the federal government. Yeah. That is kind of goes against everything that Idaho has historically stood for.
Yeah.
I've got a question before we let you guys go. Can you give me a 1-minute spiel on why individuals from across the state of Idaho should come and testify?
Yeah.
That's a great question. We put on our suits and we have these green tags that we wear every day. And, you know, we have great information to share with the legislators, but they know that generally we are representing somebody. This isn't going to affect us. But when it comes to the people that we represent, when they show up in their boots, in their jeans, in whatever, and say, this is my operation, and this is why this bill will positively or negatively affect me, that resonates.
Absolutely.
Because they are seeing their constituent state how their decision will affect them. And that, I mean, not only does it tug at the heartstrings of the legislator, but it also tugs at the common sense of some of the stuff that rolls through there. There are, I mean, we don't pass as much legislation or introduce as much legislation as some other states do. We had about 1,000 pieces of legislation that were printed. Doesn't necessarily mean they became law this year, but were printed. And public engagement on that is critical, because if not, legislators assume everything's fine and life continues on. And before you know it, there is some real stuff that passed the state level that could affect you, your operation, your families, your lives, whatever the case may be.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's a role for us, right? We'll polish the message. We'll shepherd it through the legislative process. We'll know those nuances, and we'll know those key individuals that need to be, talked to and addressed. But then it's the constituent that makes the difference.
Yeah. So another issue that you all have worked on this past session, of course, a lot of our farmers and ranchers are taking advantage of selling their commodities or goods direct to consumers. And so, Dexton, I know you've let out on a few pieces of legislation regarding that. Could you touch more on what those are and what it means for farmers and ranchers?
Yeah. So, Braden kind of brought it up at the start of this, how there's this view that Idaho Farm Bureau is big ag. Well, yeah, we are, because ag is big in the state of Idaho. It's the biggest sector in the state of Idaho. So if we need to say we're big ag, yeah, sure, we're big ag, because we have farmers and ranchers that range in size from 4 cows to 4,000 cows. We have farms that range in 10 acres to 10,000 acres. So yeah, we're big ag. And there needs to be a recognition that there are different ways to move your product. And in Idaho, prior to this legislative session, you could sell direct to consumer. So me as the farmer could sell direct to you as the buyer of non-perishable goods with a little bit of regulation. But when it came to the non-perishable side, to the perishable side, it varied based on where you were in Idaho, because different health districts can enforce the rules of this kind of space differently. We kind of had consternation with that. If people are willing to buy from me individually, selling to you, why does the government need to get involved in that? So we introduced a bill called the Idaho Direct to Consumer Commerce Act, which, I mean, it was a long bill, and I can kind of explain that here in a second. But essentially what it did is it said that as long as I am selling direct to you, perishable or non-perishable food, doesn't matter, then the government there's no regulation, there's no inspection, there's no licensing, as long as there is some simple things that have to be met. One, there has to be a label if there's 2 or more ingredients that say what is in that product, so that I, as the consumer, know, hey, this contains pecans, I'm allergic to pecans, so I can't eat this. 2, that same label has to state this hasn't been inspected, and consume at your own risk, basically. And 3, I just have to keep some simple records of transactions, when something was sold, just in case there is an instance where a foodborne illness occurs, it can be tracked to where it came from. And lastly, contact information of the person who sold it. And that's essentially it. And so now in the state of Idaho, you can sell direct to consumer whenever, however you want. But the burden and the risk is on the person who's consuming that food. And there's one more aspect of it. So the federal government limits how meat products are sold under the Federal Meat Inspection Act. Any meat that is sold commercially has to be inspected. Now, they have given authority for states to adopt what's called the custom meat exemption, that meat products can be exchanged between individuals and have it be uninspected, as long as there is shared ownership in the cow or the animal. So what that means essentially is, if I'm like say you, Cameron, have a cow, and I want meat from you, I can take that meat as long as I buy half, whole, or quarter of the cow, not of the meat product. That is what gives me the ability to take that meat, because I have ownership in the animal, not in the meat. We clarified that says, look, those fractions are arbitrary. It can be any amount of predetermined ownership in the animal, so that you don't have to have these weird fractional amounts.
Yeah.
So in essence, this bill was an effort to make food freedom more expansive in the state of Idaho. It was an over 20-page bill because we had what the bill allowed the state of Idaho to do, but then the rest was amending other sections of code where it greatly restricted sellers' ability to sell food how and when they wanted to. So I think that was a pretty cool bill, to be quite honest. I mean, when we talk about big ag, this really helps our smaller sellers, get their food out into the general public. And I should say it has to be sold within the state of Idaho. There's an income requirement an income requirement that you can't overreach, but you wouldn't reach it anyway. So
I think that's a good example of, that's a multi-year project right there to get a piece of legislation like that passed. And again, that has required everything. It required the idea that came from our members. It required a lot of work, a lot of conversations, a lot of meetings, a lot of conversations back and forth with regulatory entities, the health districts, the agencies that oversee all of this, and then the lawmakers going through the legislative process. So,
and again, bipartisan issue.
Support on both sides. Yeah, absolutely. Very important. Okay.
Do you want to ask a final question?
Anything else you guys want to?
Okay.
So you ask it.
I can throw it in.
I'll wrap it up. Yep.
Okay. On the Dirt Road Discussion Podcast, we always like to look down the road. This is an election year. Why should people get out and vote?
Well, I think that's the other part of the equation, right? We talked a lot about the policies, right? And whether the ideas coming from our grassroots member, how they transform into, actual state law and regulation and policy. The other part in there is having the right individuals in those seats, those individuals that align with our values, our principles, that understand the nuances of our industry, of our rural communities, and that they're going to listen to those constituents, to listen to these important industries, and how that's going to impact. So looking down the road, I would say, it's important for folks to get out, to study the candidates that are running, that are throwing their hats into the ring, and evaluate what do they stand on, what are their principles, what are they all about, and then make sure that you show up on election day.
I would add, you hear it all the time. If you don't vote, you can't complain.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's just a simple fact of the matter. If you want your public leaders and your legislative officials to represent you, vote for them. I would contend that the decisions that are made at a state level, though not as noisy, have more of an effect on you than than most of the decisions made at a federal level.
Yeah.
So if you really want your life to be affected by a decision that happens at a state level, make sure you're voting, because depending on how things end in April, it could impact you.
Then real fast, issues that you guys are going to work on over the next 9 months. What's coming down the road?
For me, that's a great question. One thing that we are really discussing is how to address the large animal veterinary shortage here in the state of Idaho. There's an opportunity for us to expand into Utah State University's vet school. And so we're just looking at options to see how we can potentially get some Idaho-specific seats in that program so that we can get some more vets back here in the state to service our very large animal ag industry.
I'd say water issues we're going to continue to work on, whatever we can to ensure that we have the funding, but also the locations and the additional resources that we need to make sure that our water needs are best met. Also, Idaho continues to grow. more pressure is being put on our ag land, and how we're going to continue to move forward and build upon the things that we've done in the past.
Okay. No pressure for you guys, right?
Yeah,
no
none to be had at
pressure. All right. Well, once again, we've been joined by Braden, Jensen, and Dexton Lake. Both serve on the Governmental Affairs Team for the Idaho Farm Bureau Federation. And it has been a privilege to visit with them today and learn more about what they've been up to the past 3 months. So, Braden, Dexton, thanks so much for the work that you do. And we look forward to you continuing to put on that Superman cape, go out and save the ag world. So...
Oh, boy.
Again, no pressure. No,
Thanks.
They do a great job. So with that, we'll wrap up yet another episode of Dirt Road Discussions, and we'll see you down the road.